Hey guys, it's me, Messy Frenzy, and welcome to my network, you social beings. So today I'm going to talk about psychology because why not? This video is going to be about if you should do psychology as an A-level or not. So let me talk about what psychology is if you don't know. Psychology is the study of the mind and people's behaviors. Let me talk about the reasons maybe why you should or shouldn't do psychology, and then I'll get into like what the course looks like. Psychology is very content heavy. Things that you'll need to remember. There is statistics in it, things such as chi-squared, Mann-Whitney, Houston. You need to look these things up, They're really kind of complex. You're going to have a table of results and you're going to have to plug them into the equation. So if you're not good at equations or figuring out maths and where things should go, I don't think psychology is for you, because that appears in almost every single paper. So yeah, you're going to have to do practicals. I did Edexcel, so I can only speak for Edexcel, but you have to do a practical for each of the approaches, and I'll come on to what approaches are in a second. And you need to remember the results, you need to remember the abstract, you need to remember the introduction, you need to remember your research on it, you need to remember the context, because it's going to pop up in your exam. You need to remember lots of names and dates. So maybe like Milgram, he did a shock experiment, but you need to remember the different variations he did, because he did like 13 variations, but you're meant to remember only like 3. If I was to explain it, I would be like, Milgram did a shock experiment for obedience, and in variation 3, 1963, he did this, and then explain it. That's what you're meant to use as your evidence. If you want something kind of slightly easier, maybe go to sociology, because that's more English based. Psychology is more math and scientific based, because you need to know about the structure of the brain and the neuron and things. So if you're not good at science, then maybe not do it. You have year 1 and you have year 2. Year 1, you have 4 approaches. So you have the cognitive approach, which is the approach where you look at the mind process. So you look at memory, you look at reconstructive memory, how your mind can be developed and remember something different, and how things are recalled and stuff. And you learn about 3 or 4 different memory models, and then you have to compare them and evaluate them all and stuff. And then you have 2 experiments that you have to remember for that. Yeah, and then you have your own practical that you have to remember for that as well. So that's similar with all of the approaches. You have like 4 studies you have to remember, then 2 experiments, and then your own practical that you have to remember, and a statistical test for that group as well. The second approach is the social approach. So that's where you learn about people's behavior in a natural environment. So you learn about obedience and prejudice, and you have 2 studies for obedience, 2 studies for prejudice, and you have 2 experiments you have to remember. I'm not sure if it's for each or 1 each. I think it's 1 each. Also bearing in mind that you're not only going to have to remember those experiments and studies that they give you, you're going to have to remember a few more, because you're going to have to use it as evidence. You can only use so much from what's on the course. You're going to have to do your own research and find some other experiments that relate to it. Number 3 is the biological approach. This is the one where it's scientific. So you learn about the structure of the brain and the different lobes. So you have the frontal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, and all that, parietal lobe. And then you'll learn about the nervous system. So you need to learn about the central nervous system, the nerves, like this is what the nerves look like. Biological approaches also focus on aggression. This is kind of different, because you're not going to know, it's not going to be much about studies. It's kind of be about different themes or explanations. Like with aggression, you have hormones, testosterone, that's one explanation. You have brain injuries, that's another explanation. So number 4 is the behavioral or learning approach. So that's where you learn kind of about phobias, fears, and behavior of people. It's really interesting, but it's just a lot to remember. So if you have good memory, don't forget you'll have 2 or 3 other A levels to focus on as well. So yeah, I would say start early, start ahead. There's not much videos on it, on psychology, but I'll have some websites down below, like Simply Psychology. They explain it in a simple way, and I'll have the easy ones down below so you have a gist of how it's like. That's the 4 approaches in the first year. You'll have to learn about the different ways of experimenting. So you'll have to learn about the different groups. So there's independent groups, matched pairs. So that's a way you can do an experiment. And they'll ask about methodology. That's the word. They'll ask about methodology. So you have to learn about all of that as well. And you'll have to know that for next year and for the 3rd paper, but I'll get onto that. Year 2, it depends on what school, college you go to, or what exam board you're on, because there's many different options you could do. But the compulsory one you have to do is clinical. Clinical is where you look at different disorders. So I think schizophrenia is compulsory, but then you can pick another one like OCD, anorexia, different ones. It depends on your school. I did depression and schizophrenia. They're both interesting, but it's very scientific, so you need to know about the different neurotransmitters, the names of them. You have to do a lot of reading on it, because some schools, they don't give you anything to read off of, so you're going to have to figure out the names of stuff by yourself. In clinical, you'll also learn about the methodology, different like interviews and things. Also, you learn about the different manuals in psychology, so like the ICD, which is the International Classification of Disorders, and then DSM. You'll learn about those. The school will have an option of the second thing you learn. You can learn about criminal psychology. You can learn about child development. I'm not sure about the other choices you have, but yeah. I did criminal, so I learned about more like aggression, how aggression is affected by diet, hormones, testosterone, criminals and case studies, and that's basically the whole rundown of psychology. And let me explain how the papers are. So you have 3 papers. You have one based on year 1 content. The first one, you'll have sections based on different approaches. So you'll have the methodology of that approach. They might have a question on that. They might have a question on the experiment. They might have a question on the statistics. You'll have to figure that out. Oh, you need to calculate it for the exam. So yeah, content 1 based on year 2 content. Year 2 is basically the same. They have a whole clinical section, which everyone has to do because everyone in the country does it. They focus on that. And then the second part of the paper, it has all the different sections that you could have had as an option, but you need to go to your option. And you have probably like 2 or 3 essay questions on it, I think. You have 2 hours for each exam. The 3rd paper is mainly statistics and methodology, which is mixed, but it's focused mainly on methodology and case studies, I believe, and some and key studies. And it's also there's something called issues and debates. So that's the thing in psychology that people like kind of worry about. So like ethical reasons, is psychology a science? Comparison of explanations of themes. So yeah, you'll need to learn about those as well. You need to be quick at writing, boy, and have like good kind of writing skills. You can kind of be basic, as long as you're simple and you have the key dates, the studies, you can get an A-star, literally. As long as you don't waffle and explain everything. If you just link everything to the right place, you'll get an A-star. Would I say it's easy? No. Would I say it's enjoyable? Yes. If you're good at remembering and writing, I would say it's easy. But someone like me who's not good at remembering what I did yesterday or writing a bloody sentence, then it's not great for me. But I did quite well. A way to do good in it is just probably just write a set structure for yourself. Keep practicing it with different approaches. Maybe have like a set answer for everything, because the questions kind of repeat. It's just different wording. So yeah, if you figure that out, you've finessed the system. But that's all I have today. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.